And again, just like yourself, you listen to the executives, you listen to what their pain points are, you take that back, you think about it. But what we did that I think we did right, we don't solve exactly what the executives thought, because we hear what their pain point is, and then we mesh that with the pain point of the on the ground, the property managers, the leasing agents, and we say, okay, what's your pain point? And then we make a solution that balances both. And that's how you have a true growth opportunity. Is if that Venn diagram is as overlapped as possible, that's when you have something successful. And that's where we're able to hit with ApartmentJet.
Welcome to Multifamily Excellence, the podcast that explores the ever-evolving world of the multifamily industry. I'm your host, Jonathan Treble. In each episode, I'll spend time with a world-class multifamily leader to learn how they're continuously pushing boundaries for excellence. You'll get to hear their perspectives on career progression, leadership philosophies, and strategies for operational excellence.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Excellence. This episode is brought to you by my company, WithMe. WithMe makes people's lives better every day through convenient, technology-enabled solutions for the multifamily apartment industry and beyond. Today's guest is someone whose name has become synonymous with innovation and transformation in the multifamily industry, Eric Broughton. As the CEO of OK2Charge, Eric is leading the way in integrating electric vehicle charging solutions into multifamily and vacation rental properties, bringing sustainability and modern convenience to communities across the country. Eric's career is marked by leadership roles at some of the most impactful companies in multifamily tech. His companies have been acquired by the likes of RealPage, Expedia, and more. Through his passion for technology and his entrepreneurial spirit, Eric has been at the forefront of reshaping modern multifamily. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate the opportunity.
And I will also say it's an honor to have somebody on the show who I'm actually friends with, who I catch up with socially from time to time.
Absolutely.
You're not the first, but most of my guests are more business acquaintances. You're actually someone I'd call a friend. So
I appreciate
excited
that.
to have you on.
Right back at you.
In the same format that I've done with all the episodes until now, I'd like to go all the way back to your college days, because the purpose of Multifamily Excellence is to understand how leaders like you ended up in the place you did, and we can't do that unless we know the full story. Mm-hmm. So why don't you touch on what you studied in college, and importantly, how that led to, let's say, the beginning of your career?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, right over my shoulder there, a degree, electrical engineering from South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. So instead of going all the way back to childhood and growing up on a farm, we can start right off in college. And went to college on scholarship, played football, D2 running back. I was fortunate enough to make all conference, and captain a couple years, and that helped me out. But also because I had to earn my way and work my way through college. I was also a security guard at an art gallery, of all things. Wow. And I could do my calculus 1, 2, 3 and differential equations while I'm guarding art. And at an engineering school, you don't get too many school buses coming through to look at the art at the school. But it was interesting. Actually, Sue the T-Rex was stored there, so that was pretty cool before I went to the Field Museum in Chicago. And then worked the summers. But also 1 year I blew my knee out in football, and I played in the college band. So I kind of think it's one of those things. Played saxophone. One of those things where I've always been active, very busy, and I love just pushing myself to learn and do new things.
Oh, that's incredible. Thanks. So you studied electrical engineering.
I did.
Did you imagine a career in that same track as an electrical engineer, or was this just something to major in because you had to?
Yeah, it originated when I was in high school. I thought I was going to become a lawyer, actually. Oddly enough, one of my daughters became a lawyer. So pretty interesting. But I thought I was going to go that direction. And then I was in a physics class my senior year, and I watched how light bulbs went from serial to parallel and how they lit up in different. And I started to understand more about electrical currents. I thought that's fascinating. So I followed that path. But as I went deeper into electrical engineering, I realized I did not want to be in the large power consumption, or is more on the circuit side. And that's when, really dating myself a little bit, but that's when computers started to take off, personal computers and Netscape and Microsoft. And that's where I almost evolved from true electrical engineering to computer engineering, and then eventually to computer science and writing code. And that's really where I struck my passion, is writing code, but electrical engineering was the pathway to that.
Okay. I know that you didn't enter multifamily immediately out of college. It took, I think, several years and I think a couple different stints. Why don't you tell us how your career was shaping before you entered multifamily?
Yeah, so even though I was an electrical engineer, I always wanted to be at the forefront of technology. The very first, or the opportunity I chose as my career was a plant engineer with a steel mill. But it wasn't just any steel mill. It was a steel mill built in 1995, which is probably one of the first steel mills built in probably the last 30 years at that time. And it was an electric arc furnace and a mini mill. So we would get scrap metal from Phoenix, from Los Angeles, from Las Vegas. So think of refrigerators, old cars. You'd put 110 tons of scrap into this big vat, and then you essentially create lightning in a bottle, an anode and a cathode, and it arcs across about 50 megawatts. So think about 25,000 homes worth of power, all this juice going into one, and that creates so much heat, it melts that steel, and then you burn off some of the plastics and other items, and you add in components, and that created rebar and merchant rounds. So I became a plant engineer at that plant. I was in the operating side and a plant engineer. And probably with about 3 months, I was promoted to become a shift manager. And that was quite fascinating. So here's this 22-year-old kid. Fortunately, I was still in pretty good shape from playing football. So here I am managing everything from 25-year-olds to basically 60-year-olds living in Arizona, and some of them from Michigan, all still steel dogs type thing. And managing these individuals, and it was quite the experience. And did that for about 6 months. Then I received another promotion to the finishing department manager, and ran that. And that's when I was able to assist. At the time, ABB was in the plant, and they had some engineers from Sweden, and there was a really really good developer. And I worked with him to reduce our changeover times from about 15 minutes, switching from like a number 3 rebar to number 4 rebar. Take about 15 minutes. I was pushing that data in the Oracle database, working with this gentleman through programmable logic controllers, pulling that data back, and we went down to about 3 minutes of changeover time. And the executives thought, "Wow, this is pretty cool." The general manager said, "Eric, you know a lot about computers. You want to be the IT manager?" And I'm thinking, much better to be an IT manager than be on the floor where you have to shower before you go to bed, because you have steel dust in your hair and everything. And so I became the IT manager at probably about the ripe old age of 24 in a $100 million steel mill. And it was quite fascinating, as Oracle was the core technology, and that set me on a nice path.
Well, Oracle must have been kind of fresh and new back then, right?
It was kind of new. Yes, exactly. The database, and this is still client server. So you'd have the big server, and we had our own data room, and you can imagine a steel mill. That thing had dual, pressure and everything else. And so the dual filtration, so you don't have steel dust, and the temperatures. It was in the middle of Arizona. I didn't mention that. So I was just north of where you are now in Kingman, Arizona on Route 66.
Wow. Okay. So IT manager at 24, like an old school server. I'm picturing it in a big room.
Exactly.
Did you ever like kick the cord out by accident and like shut the whole thing down?
I did not. No, that was more of an internship when I was in college. I was, that's another story. I was measuring the temperature on a switch gear panel, about 2,000 amps, and probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I was measuring the temperature, and I took off the bolts, and the metal drifted and it fell down in there, and it went across 2 of the posts, and it shut down the whole plant, and I watched my life literally flash in front of my eyes. So that was good times.
Oh my God. I feel like that scene has played out in so many TV series, and then recently with CrowdStrike, right? Some intern somewhere.
Absolutely. Oh, I lived through Y2K. That's another story. We had to report that, and so I'm in the steel mill at midnight, partying like it's 1999, going through books and making sure that each one of the systems is up and running.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fast forward a few years, I imagine you stayed on this IT track for some years, and then that's what eventually led you to multifamily, right?
It did a little bit more circuitous route in that had an opportunity. I'm this IT manager. I'm writing code for Oracle, loving what I'm doing. I have four Oracle books on my shelf, and I get a call from this recruiter from Chicago. And two of the books on the shelf are written by these gentlemen, a company called TUSC, the ultimate software consultants. So in my mind, it's kind of the McKinsey & Company of Oracle consulting, if you will. And these guys are just gunners. And I just felt so honored that they would call and reach out to me, and they found my resume and some articles that I'd written. And so I came to Chicago, worked for Northern Trust. I was a data architect for the wealth management platform. Had like the Gretzky's and George Bush family. So it's pretty cool to do that. Yeah, think about doing like data for artwork and cars and horses, and then of course all their CUSIPs for their stock funds. So that was quite fascinating. And then my favorite project was with Archipelago, and that was Arca X. So you've seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
Yes.
He's on the steps and he's trying to trade. Well, that was the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco. This group in Chicago buys the Pacific Stock Exchange after it's shut down. They take it all online and put it in Chicago, and it was Archipelago and Arca X. And I was a project manager on that project, all Oracle technology, and at the time, maybe about 15,000 records per second. And I led a project on the pink sheets, the over-the-counter. But they became the foundation for the New York Stock Exchange. So I was able to work with Steve Rubenau, who was the CIO at the New York Stock Exchange for a while. Very exciting project. But I think one of your previous guests had mentioned this. I raised my hand when I was a part of this company, and because I attended some of these meetings of the Chicago Oracle User Group, and I'd speak at events and talk about my experiences about real exciting things like database error control or SQL statements and Cartesian joins and all these nerdy things that I loved at the time. And I raised my hand and said, "Hey, I'd like to help out with the Chicago Oracle User Group." And then after a year or two, I became the president of the Chicago Oracle User Group. Okay, so I'm have the Oracle User Group. I have a meeting on the 66th floor of the Sears Tower, and one of the attendees was the chief information officer from Amley Residential, and they were just acquired by Morgan Stanley Real Estate for $25 billion. And the tech stack at Amley at the time was Oracle. And they had built this platform up, but they still had RealPage as their front end for the property management system. But everything behind that was Oracle, from everything from their dashboards to how they'd measure each individual employee. And when Morgan Stanley bought them, they paid a premium. What I understand is about $100 million premium for just that technology. Wow. So I was brought in as a consultant, really, to work with them and deploy this across all their $100 billion of assets under management time. And that's how I became in the multifamily industry, is really through this Morgan Stanley acquisition. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So we started to roll out some data warehousing projects initially.
So
go ahead, please.
Explain this. I'm not quite sure I understand so Oracle was the backbone of Amley's. What exactly? Of their resident management system, of their accounting system? Like what was Oracle being used for?
It was their accounting system first and foremost. They had RealPage as their resident management system, so their property management system surrounding the leases. But they had Oracle databases for their data warehouse, and Amley has a dialed-in a system where they would know. And this is probably in 2010, 2011. Greg O'Barry, Maria Banks, Greg Mutz, Alan Peters, brilliant people that are managing these data plays. So they would know, here are the leasing agents that are closing the most. Here are the maintenance technicians that are closing the fastest. They would have it down to, this is what the carpet remnant should look like, or the carpet layout should be, and optimizing that to reduce waste. So all this was in the Oracle platform. They spent a lot of money to build it, but it was very effective and very dialed in.
Wow.
It was impressive.
That's impressive for 2010 and early days still of like data visualization and analysis.
It really is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. I was blown away by it.
Okay. And from there, did you join a different company? How did you end up at RealPage eventually?
So we created an entity called Yield Technologies, and that was taking that tech stack from Amley's and on behalf of Morgan Stanley Real Estate. One of our first clients was Safeguard Self-Storage. Like, how would that even make sense? But Safeguard, we took that same Oracle tech stack, put that in Safeguard Self-Storage, which Morgan Stanley acquired the majority ownership of that. And then we started to deploy even like revenue management. So things such as, okay, if you have this storage locker that's near the elevator, it has a higher value than one much further away, maybe about 200 feet away. And then we'd look at how they point a sales system. So building these different pieces, even revenue management, seasonality, when do they expire? So taking some of that real estate mentality into Safeguard Self-Storage, and did a couple more projects. And that's when the first type of productization, we took the AMLI dashboard and data warehouse and created a product called Yield Vision. So Yield Vision we're pretty excited. That was our first product. Starting to roll that out, talk to different groups, everyone from Pinnacle to, Greystar to you name it, UDR, Equity, all of our friends, and said, hey, you want to do this? And what I learned is that this is not Oracle anymore. You're not getting people in the real estate world writing checks for $500,000 to do a data mapping exercise. In the Oracle world, that's not that big a deal, right? Of course, I'll spend a couple $100,000. I'm rolling out Oracle ERP. In the real estate, people say, no, I'm not writing you a check. If I have $250K or $500,000, I'm going to put that capital and get my 5% cap rate on that and 20 exit. Right. Why would I put that into tech? So that's where, we've got about three companies deploying on that. And then we said, okay, that's not working well. And simultaneously, the financial crisis hit. So all of our opportunities as far as consulting, we were scheduled to go to China and start rolling out. Morgan Stanley was buying up some assets in China and Russia, other locations in Europe, South America. It was a pretty exciting time until the financial crisis, and then everything started unraveling. So first, everything was put on pause, and after it was really hitting the fan, as it would be, then they unwound our business, but they let us sell externally. So I landed a job with the Port of Oakland, a big contract. So we implemented the Seaport Airport commercial real estate, managed all that. But most importantly, we created a software as a service platform called Rent Sentinel at the time.
Okay.
And that was because we saw one of the first areas to come back would be multifamily. And one of the greatest areas of spend with the least amount of visibility was marketing. So we started saying, how is AMLI managing marketing? At the time, we'd say, okay, why did you choose apartments.com here and rent.com over here? Bagels. It was basically like that. Like, why would they go a certain direction? And it wasn't good enough for us. We think there's got to be a better way. So we were actually one of the first ones to start measuring every phone call, every email. We would put little pixels into Craigslist ads so you could see when they're being opened up. Eventually, now you can't do that anymore. A lot of things you can't do anymore. But we were the first ones to track, and we would have a unique phone number, a unique email address for every single thing. And that's when and by the time we sold to RealPage, we had 9 of the top 10 property management companies using our platform. I think it was maybe 42 of the top 50 NMHC. We were quite prevalent in the space and became the foundation, one of the foundational platforms for LeaseStar at RealPage.
Okay. So RealPage acquired this entity.
That's right.
You went over to RealPage as part of that acquisition.
That's correct.
How long did you stay there, and what came next?
Yeah, so the assignment from Steve Wynn was, okay, Eric, prove your muscle. You're president, COO of this entity. Convert at least 70% of these clients over to RealPage, and we'll see what happens. Steve Wynn is a pretty good guy. He's kind of a great negotiator, and he's a pretty good motivator in that sense as well. So I accepted the challenge, and I think I was able to get about 77% of the clients over, which oddly is success because a lot of people say, oh, you're at RealPage, I'm out. So that was one of the things. Got that done. Steve liked what I did, and then he made me president of LeaseStar. So I was president of LeaseStar for a couple of years, managed about 5 of those entities. My New Place, there's a social media component. There was Lead to Lease, a couple other platforms that we rolled into this LeaseStar. Led that, and then I was recruited away from RealPage by E-Supply Systems, and it was the McCombs family. So Red McCombs, he used to own about 350 car dealerships, multi-billion-dollar private equity, owned the Vikings and the Denver Nuggets and a couple of San Antonio Spurs. Really dynamic guy. And he had invested in this company, E-Supply Systems, and they were trying to figure out where they're going to go. And he brought me in and kind of convinced me, hey, this is going to be a rocket ship. All it needs is the right CEO. So I went in as CEO of E-Supply Systems in San Antonio, took it over. But what I quickly found is really didn't have the right business model. It was a pretty dynamic sales team that had convinced a lot of companies to you know how you start off maybe, we'll test this out with 8 properties.
Right.
And if you have a portfolio of 60 or 70, and it never made it over that hump from the 80 properties to a portfolio rollout. And I think it was because the salespeople were really good, but the product didn't have the right value proposition. So dug into that, and I retooled the product to go from more of a per unit basis, which still was, but more of a group purchasing organization. That's really where the value was. It was a spend management platform. And I was able to get these suppliers. They put in some money to it because they wanted to expand their footprint and brought in the value proposition. One of the lessons learned I had was looking at that existing team and figuring out who was adding that most significant value. There's a book called The First 90 Days where you kind of go in and you assess who on the team is adding a significant value. And there was a hidden gem, and she was being underutilized, promoted her to an SVP or VP. And she really changed the narrative, and she's continued to work with me, and she's at Inhabit right now. But Dana, I'm calling you out. It's great. So she was solid. And it was a great conversation, and Gurpal Singh, one of the investors, introduced us and said, hey, you guys should really chat. And that was just a really good turning point with the business by listening to one of the employees who'd been there. And she was actually a former procurement at UDR. So she also knew from the ground how to deploy that. So we really changed the value proposition, totally turned around. Moved the business forward, got it to break even, and then that's where all the investors, we got together and agreed the best outcome was to do an exit, perform an exit, talk to a few groups, and then RealPage bought us again. Steve Wynn and I had a great rapport. He trusted me, I trusted him. We had the exit, and then but also I had this concept in the back of my mind from different conversations of Apartment Jet, which is the short-term rental, and I told Steve, hey, you got a great team, they're ready to rock and roll. And even today, I think it's maybe $130, $150 million business for RealPage right now. It's doing great.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So handed it off. But I said, I'm going to do a transition consultant, perform that. And then I created Apartment Jet. And it's fun in that the moment, the court guys probably remember this best, like Pete Regulus and Jeff Rowe and that team. So RealPage comes into my booth. It's at NAA in San Francisco. I don't know if you remember that far back, but it was, who knows, right? It's NAA. But anyways, RealPage, we signed the bottom line. It's done. Cash is in the account. Andrea Massey comes in, pulls in the banner. Hey, you're now a RealPage company. Congratulations. But I had this concept for Apartment Jet, and I had that because I would be at these events and hearing Airbnb. Jada Jackson, great guy, brilliant guy. He's speaking to these multifamily asset owners and saying, hey, on behalf of Airbnb, we're going to list your units on Airbnb and your residents are going to love it. Isn't that great? And all these multifamily executives are going, no, that's terrible. What are you talking about? You're going to take our assets. You're going to make all the money on it. We're going to have more wear and tear. We're going to have unhappy residents. And our cut is what? That'd be a big zero. And Josh was like, exactly. Isn't that great? And they just kept on skewering him. And I kept on thinking, there's got to be a better way. So I interviewed a bunch of execs, kind of like you've done, Jonathan, and said, what are you doing? And then I went in the court booth. I said, hey, how do you guys do furniture? They educated me in furniture. I talked to Matri Johnson, who was at TransUnion. So I figured out how to do furniture, how to do background checks, worked with Assurant to do a insurance program. And that's where really built really quickly Apartment Jet. Two of the co-founders, Andy Hamilton and Kevin Kapersky, that I'd worked with at Yield Technologies and Rent Sentinel. So we got together, had some investors, and that's actually where I met you.
That's common
Jeff
investor.
Maters.
Yeah. We were cousin companies at the time.
There you go.
Sibling companies, something like that.
I wish I had my coffee mug with me. That's the print with me and the Apartment Jet logo. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. And to give the listeners a sense, how big did the impact of Apartment Jet become before Expedia acquired the company, which was only, I think, a couple years later. It was a pretty quick turnaround.
It was. Yeah, we have some really happy investors, some that just came in last minute, and they were able to 3.5x their money in about 18 months. So pretty happy, to say the least. And that's where Jeff Maters is pretty happy. I think we're still the first exit, the only exit in the fund that we came in.
Right.
Yeah. So it's pretty fun. So that's Jeff Maters introduced you to you. So I really appreciate that. That was great. And you were gracious enough to let me invest in WithMe as well at that time. So it was very fortuitous. I appreciate it. But we had that exit. And it was quite impactful. I think at the time we had probably about 5 of the top 10 as clients.
Okay. Wow.
You know, go through owners and very quick growth. And again, just like yourself, you listen to the executives, you listen to what their pain points are. You take that back, you think about it. But what we did, that I think we did right, we don't solve exactly what the executives thought, because we hear what their pain point is, and then we mesh that with the pain point of the on the ground, the property managers, the leasing agents, and we say, okay, what's your pain point? And then we make a solution that balances both. And that's how you have a true growth opportunity. Is if that Venn diagram is as overlapped as possible, that's when you have something successful. And that's what we're able to hit with ApartmentJet.
I can totally agree. We have to mesh those same concerns, executive level feedback on printer and coffee amenities. Usually it's, do we really need it? And, you know, the on the ground voice is always, yes, we do, because otherwise that's going to be on us to provide printouts for folks, or put in some sort of DIY coffee solution. So meshing those two is a good way to put it. I'm curious, you mentioned earlier, one of the objections to short-term rentals in apartment buildings is really hard, I think, to overcome. And that's the maybe like concern from other residents, right? That, okay, there's people on my floor, maybe it's right next to me, who are just here for a couple nights, a few nights, who knows who's coming in, right? How did you overcome that objection? Or did you find that the clients that would use ApartmentJet were in some sort of special phase of, let's say, a lease up, or they had a certain type of property that was more conducive to short-term rental?
Right. Yeah, great question. Much more the former than the latter, in that our favorite clients to bring on would be those that already had guest suites. Very common in multifamily, so that the residents would be comfortable. Oh yeah, it's very nice to have this amenity available to us. So we'd go in with guest suites, but we'd say, you know what, we're going to manage this in a much more fair and balanced manner, in that it's open to you, because what's happening is, let's say it's Kansas City and the Chiefs are playing that weekend, and the leasing agent's cousin, or somebody gets it for $150 a night, but then it's February 22nd and nobody cares in Kansas City because it's cold. And it's still $150 a night, and that's when your grandmother wants to come
dynamic
stay.
Pricing. So prior to ApartmentJet, when you were talking to these executives or site folks, what was the vacancy rate like on those guest suites?
Quite a bit, because and if they're even tracking it, to your point, KPIs are very limited. It was more, we just kind of look at it as an amenity. It's kind of it's a nice to have. Maybe some would use it as show units and dress up the fridge type thing, but that didn't work out very well. So they looked at this, became a monetization opportunity as well as a guest opportunity. So it was really a no-brainer. And then some of these groups were able to even increase the revenue and go above and beyond, to the point where we discovered a new topic that I discovered was this bad income, or bad revenue with some of these REITs. They'd say, "Whoa, you're making me too much money." How's that possible? So that was a nice education. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move forward. So you stayed at Expedia through that acquisition, which is normal. I'm sure you had an earn-out.
Yes.
And tell me about that experience, because Expedia is a unique company. I've heard it's very well run, some great people there.
Yes.
And tell me how you went back to the drawing board with your current venture.
Yeah. I was really enjoying Expedia Group, and to your point, I might still be there today, but it was the pandemic that happened, and I was probably there about 18 months. We were growing the platform. They gave me more control. I earned my way into. We created a group called Expedia Group Multifamily Solutions, so something very, very interesting. Rolled Pillow. Pillow was another acquisition that we rolled under this entity. So was leading that, and Pillow was more for the residents, where ApartmentJet was more for the guest suites and the asset owner. So starting to roll that up, getting more integrated with Vrbo, then with Expedia. And then was two things we were working on that would have been really exciting. It was like a rewards program, like Expedia Rewards, because Expedia also powers like Chase Travel and others. So we had some conversations that would have been game changing. And then also we pivoted and created when the pandemic started, we created a first responder, like a flexible housing for first responders, because we saw New York City coming up. Yeah, so we pivoted that, and then, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, Expedia Group was just spiraling down. So I guess that's the story of my career. Morgan Stanley triggered me here, and then Expedia Group had the same thing with the pandemic. So they shut down non-essential businesses, and ours was one of those, unfortunately. I don't blame them. I think it was the right decision, the grand scheme of things, and they're doing great now, and there's some good people there. But then it was able to sit out for a little while with good severance and all that good stuff.
Nice.
And then and I'd been talking to Inhabit even before about the opportunity they had. They were looking at an investment from Goldman Sachs at the time, and they wanted a leader that would come in and bring in some innovation, but also be ready for that next step, which I had experience from Expedia and RealPage. So the intent with me joining Inhabit, my title was Chief Strategy Officer, but the job was step 1, take over the vacation division, step 2, take over residential, and then become CEO and president and take the company public. So that was the plan. I was like, that's what I'm here for. That sounds like the right plan. So I went in, took over vacation, which is fascinating. It's about 4 different property management systems, insurance, websites. They really did a great job. And it was great for me personally to be part of the Vacation Rental Management Association, met with like Governor DeSantis, educating him on the difference between professional property managers and the Airbnb, individuals. So working with some lobbyists there, groups like that.
Did he get it? Yeah.
I know he did get it. And that's a great question, because he repeated some of our lines about 2 hours later at one of his stump sessions. So they could nailed it. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Eric Broughton, speechwriter.
Yeah, hey, it happens.
Incarnation.
I had a group. We had about 8 of us at the table. I was on his left-hand side. There's some picture of us floating around, somewhere. I think it was embargoed at the time. But we were, as you have to do, you have to have stories, right? And we brought in 2 people who, one was a 3rd-generation property manager with vacation homes in the beachfront. And she spoke about how she was, don't call me Airbnb. I'm a property man. I'm a vacation rental property. I was the original bed and breakfast, So it's kind of fascinating to educate him on that. And it helped that Inhabit, at the time, we had over $1 billion of transactions going through all of our software in just the state of Florida. So watching Governor DeSantis's like, whoa, wait a minute, what? B with a B? So it was great to have that. And then something else we created was the ability for the property managers, they could put on $1 per night stay. And that would go into funding education, because there's still a lot of undercurrents. And I face this with ApartmentJet, face this at Expedia and at Inhabit. There's an undercurrent of these short-term rentals, and you're seeing them outlawed in a lot of places like New York City and even in Scottsdale, where you're at. There's more draconian rules. Some for the right reason, some are misplaced, as most laws and regulations can be. Yeah, good intentions.
Sure. Or regulatory capture once the incumbents get in and they want everyone else to suffer.
That's exactly right.
But not quite the same case, but yes.
Not intentionally. Right, no. Exactly. So educated that. It was good.
All right. And so from Inhabit, I know now you're doing OK2Charge.
Yes.
What was that transition like?
Yeah, the transition was, I didn't see the company going public. And the CEO spot, she did not want to vacate it. She kind of was enjoying her spot and said, okay, this isn't what I signed up for. But I brought in some great people, and a lot of them are still there doing great things. And I saw Blackstone just brought in a nice investment. So it's really exciting to see Inhabit continue to grow. And I think you're going to see them active again, in the multifamily space with this Blackstone, investment. So excited for that. 2 acquisitions I performed. One was Resman, which is really, I was really proud of that, and that making sure that's that hub of the spoke. And then I couldn't leave until I finished the Anyone Home acquisition with Todd Kettler and team. So once that was closed, then I was allowed to leave. So I did make sure. So Todd was like, "What the heck, Eric? You just acquired me and you just left." I said, "Well, that was part of the condition. I had to get you in the door, and then I could move on." So, but I met these gentlemen that had an access control company, door locks, thermostats, and the vacation side, and they were already a partner in another space. And they said, "Hey, we have this client, high net worth client in Hilton Head. He found out that this local Uber driver is charging his car at our property at night, or while I'm gone for 2 or 3 weeks. What can you guys do?" And they figured out how to integrate with an EV charger. And I'm an electrical engineer. I'm driving a Tesla. I'm like, I've been dreaming about this, thinking about this one of the concepts. Like literally my whiteboard, I had 3 concepts, and one of them was EV charging. And I thought, okay, I'm going to partner with these guys and build an EV charging platform. And at the time, Wallbox was going public, and everything was going nuts. Money was flying around. Yeah, company's getting acquired for $200 million. So I thought, boy, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to SPAC this. It's going to be amazing. So I jumped on board, and it's been tough. To be really frank, it's been EV charging world is difficult. We found a cadence. Initially, I've had to pivot because we initially partnered with a group called NLX, and they would manufacture in Mexico, put our faceplate on. So you'd go into this wall, and their headquarters were in California, San Carlos, California, and it would be Jeep, Chrysler, OK2Charge, Arrival, Mercedes.
Nice.
Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So we were ready to rock and roll, but the charger value kept on dropping down. So the more inventory you had, it's a diminishing value.
Yeah,
and
sure.
plus starting up selling them like $999. Now it's probably like a $450, $500, probably a $500 charger, and that's really difficult when you have that inventory. So now I've pivoted probably about the last 12 months, 100% software focused, out of the hardware game, partnering with like Siemens, ABB, Wallbox, Serova, LG, Samsung. Those are all my clients. And that's been a nice change, and we're seeing our growth trajectory pick up. Deployed at 6 properties, the Greystar example. So we have 6 properties, all ABB chargers, going great. We have ZRS, worked with them. They had some Siemens chargers. They weren't working. We worked with them, got that turned around, got those chargers working, put our software on there. Everything's great. Residents are using it. So all these different companies, we're working with them to monetize and do access control, and doing it in a manner that makes sense for multifamily. And as you know, the easy button so that the on-site leasing team has to do nothing. That's key.
Yeah, so key. And I know you're only in your 3rd year still doing that. And those first couple of years are really hard. You're trying to find that product market fit. You're trying to get the pricing right, the value props, and understand the lay of the land. So kudos for, those are some big names you're already solving problems for. Yep. What's next, Eric? Can you share what your vision is for OK2Charge or anything broader?
Absolutely. So originally my vision with OK2Charge was this is going to be this massive platform. Like I said, go public. We have millions of chargers throughout the U.S. It's going slower than I'd like. So now what I'm doing is taking all those lessons learned from RealPage, from Expedia, from Inhabit, and saying, okay, I have also this experience that I can build upon. So I have this pillar of OK2Charge. I'm building another pillar in the spend management space. I'm spending another pillar in the short-term rental space. I'm working with another group to build a turn management, and I'm looking at some others as well. So essentially creating a new platform. I don't have a name for it yet. I have some thoughts, but really kind of a holdco. But key thing is to still have that focus on OK2Charge and these other businesses all in the proptech space. So similar back office, similar sales strategy, similar sales motion, and to continue to build that up. And similar to what WithMe did, you went from printing to coffee machines and growing. So very similar model, but different and adjacent, but all in the proptech space, and starting to see that momentum. And then I can see that growing. And who knows, maybe what that name I come up with, it'll be the next RealPage or Inhabit.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
Amazing
you.
Conversation. Kudos for all your successes. And
Thanks.
I learned a lot more about you than I didn't know, including president of the Oracle User Group Chicago.
That's exactly right.
I would not have pegged you for one of the, varsity captain in football, and Oracle User Group chair, Renaissance man Eric Broughton,
and the saxophonist.
Political speechwriter. So
absolutely,
amazing.
All right.
Well, Eric, I'll see you soon, I'm sure, at a show coming up here. And thanks for taking your time to explain your past to our listeners. We've seen the demographics. They span all kind of levels of seniority in multifamily. And I know from folks who have reached out to me, they really appreciate the conversations to learn and get reference points about how folks have made it to the very top of these companies that they all know. So kudos again. Thanks. Yeah, we will be in touch.
All right. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Multifamily Excellence, brought to you by WithMe. WithMe is making lives better every day through convenient, technology-enabled amenities for the multifamily industry and beyond. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.